Hi, I'm Gaye Lindfors, and you're listening to the Caretakers Journey podcast.
Welcome to this week's Meaningful Conversation. I'm your host, Carol Leatham. As a caretaker, have you ever asked this question? Lord, how do I fix this? Well, I know I have, and significant moments prompted today's guest to change this question in her life from Lord, how do I fix this? To Lord, what do you want me to know? God is so faithful to show us who He has called us to be and what He has called us to do, even when we're caretaking, and even when that becomes such a significant part of our lives. When life shifts, how do we keep going? How do we continue with the calling that God has placed on our heart? In her new book, Anticipate God's Goodness, Letters of Encouragement to Ignite Your Spirit, our guest today, Gaye, offers suggestions and encouragement for reigniting your spirit. In our conversation today, she's going to help you listeners rekindle your desire to say yes to God, identify ways to settle those setbacks that every one of us as caretakers face, and then offer practical action prompts and resources that are going to keep us going. My guest, Gaye, has a love for God's word and the wit, and I tell you, she's funny. We've had many conversations before this recording, and she is funny, and I love that about her. She has a wit that she's known for, and Gaye will help you discover the hope-filled connection between God's faithfulness and your daily living. Not afraid to poke fun of her own mishaps, she delivers a blend of Bible teaching, life stories, and humor through her books and messages. How cool is it that she's going to teach us how to laugh at ourselves and say, yeah, we all do it. Gaye has served as Midwest Regional Director for Christian Women in Media, is the past president of the National Speakers Association in Minnesota, and she's led a human resource team that has supported 11,000 airline employees. Now that's a job. Her latest book is filled with real-life encouragement. Anticipate God's Goodness, Letters of Encouragement to Ignite Your Spirit. So welcome to the show, Gaye, today, and I'm looking forward to some encouragement.
Oh, Carol, this is going to be fun. Thank you so much.
We always have a
Yes.
good time when we talk,
Yes.
and that's one of the fun things is I like for my listeners to feel like we're just having a cup of coffee and we're just all sitting around. So, Gaye, I want to start out because from the moment I met you, your journey has inspired me. So tell us about your faith journey, and you sometimes describe it as saying yes to
Yes.
God.
Yes.
So tell us about
Well,
that.
I grew up in a small town in northwestern Minnesota, and my parents loved God, were faithful to His calling, and I had a good childhood. I would say though, my parents lost several children when they were babies and toddlers. So we went through a time when I was growing up that was really hard, but they always taught me that God is faithful. God is faithful no matter what.
Mhm.
So growing up, I learned to love Jesus and went through some normal high school, college, growing up. But overall, I loved God. Well, when my dad died about 20 years ago, but my mom, about 10 years ago, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And it came to my sisters and I to become her caregivers, eventually 24/7. And that kind of was,
Wow.
as I'm sure for you and for many of our listeners, that kind of puts a whoa, I didn't see that coming into our lives,
Yeah.
right? And all of a sudden, yeah, a big whoa. And all of a sudden, this phrase that God is faithful, we think, really? This this is not supposed to happen. But I learned through that He is faithful. And it was during her, the last part of her um, illness, before she died, that things got just a little wonky. And we realized, wow, we're just losing mom here faster than we thought. But I was her
Yeah.
primary caregiver, so I had moved into her apartment with her, just a few miles from where my husband and I live. And I really just had to kind of take my whole business and and move there. And she became my world. And after she died,
Wow.
I thought, okay, Lord, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I felt lost. My primary
Yeah.
responsibility was no longer here, and I felt lost. And that's when I realized I needed to find another reason to say yes to God. I needed something. And if you'd like, I can tell you about that little moment that changed my trajectory in that year.
Yeah, I
All
would
right.
love that. Share that
So
with us.
this was about a year after Mom died, and my sister and I were at my nephew's triathlon watching him race. And we watched a group of middle aged women come out of the water, out of the swimming part of the race, and they were running towards the
Mm-hmm.
bikes. And a lot of the racers had those fancy zip swimming gear that they had on,
Yes.
and then they ran to their bikes and they were clipping in their shoes and all this. Well, this group of women, they were wearing, I think, swimsuits, one piece suits that they just bought at Target, and they got to their bikes. They didn't change clothes and they didn't have any clip on shoes. They just got on their bikes in their swimsuits, put on their flip flops or their sneakers, and they started running. And it triggered something in me that said, wow, they are getting up and going. And I turned to my sister
Yeah.
Julie and I said, I want to be like that. And I thought,
Mm.
was that hard for them to do? Yes. Did they want to quit? Yes. But they got up and they
Mm.
went. And I thought, Gay, it's
Mm-hmm.
time for you to get up and go. You need to just say
Oh,
yes to God and get up and go. And that's what changed my world, my faith.
wow. I love that. I actually interviewed an Ironman
Did you really?
yesterday. And his interview will, I don't know if it's going to air before this one or not, but it was the most
Mhm.
inspiring. He's an Ironman who became Ironman after he got brain cancer,
Oh,
terminal
God
brain
bless him.
cancer. And I have, so I'm familiar
Mhm.
with the whole triathlon and
Mhm.
Ironman races. And I love that picture of these, because I've seen them get out with their fancy
Yeah.
clothes and their fancy shoes
Mhm.
and all that. So that's inspiring to me to think that these normal everyday women just came out of the water. So I want to back up for a second and talk about when you were caring for
Mhm.
your mom, because you and I've had this conversation and you had a very unique situation happen where your mom lived very
Mhm.
close to you and you and your husband lived in a house maybe a
Mhm.
mile away, and you ended up moving from your house with your husband to the house with your
Mhm.
mom. And so talk us through how did that happen, and how did your husband and you how did you guys come to that decision, and how did that
Yeah.
work?
Oh, good questions. So for a few years, Mom was able to be on her own, and I would run over there in the mornings and check on her. But it became clear pretty
Yeah.
fast, and the doctors told us she can't be on her own. Mom never tried to run
Mhm.
away, but she would get forgetful, and she was starting to
Yeah.
fall, and she just couldn't remember. It was Alzheimer's. She couldn't
Yeah.
remember. So we decided that
Yeah.
we needed to move in. Well, because she was so close to me and I was running my own business, I had a consulting business. So I was able to just
Okay.
move over to her apartment, and I was there most of the week. But one of my sisters who lives here in town would come for a couple nights. She's a flight attendant
Okay.
though, so we couldn't come up with a schedule like this week I'm here and there. We worked around her flying and all of that stuff, which was great. But she'd come for a couple nights a week, and then my other sister would come
Yeah.
for a few weeks in the most of the summer. But at the time I
Okay.
was there, until the last year or so, in the morning, I'd get up and get Mom up, and then I would get in my car and drive past Caribou, pick my husband up a Caribou coffee latte with vanilla, and then we'd get home and we'd have coffee together and sit and catch up, and then I'd go back to Mom's. And then there were times if I had consulting
Wow.
meetings, Steve would come over to Mom's and sit with her, and she loved that. She just
Wow.
loved being with Stevie Boy, as she called him. So that's kind of how we worked it out
Oh.
until the last couple years. Then it was I couldn't run home anymore. And I will say, Steve and we got to that decision without any stress or consternation. He's a saint. And we don't have
Yeah.
children, grown up children
Yeah.
or young children. That made it easier. and we just decided this is
Yeah.
what we do. And I'll just one add to that. A month after Mom died, we went into lockdown COVID, and Steve's mom
Yes.
was in living in a senior citizen apartment building, and we realized she didn't want to be locked into her room, so she came to live with us, and she lived with us for a few months, and then finding out she had COVID while she was here, so I went right back into caretaking mode with his mom, which was just fine. But anyway, that's how we made it work. So I worked out of her apartment. So I do have. Can I tell you one
I
funny
love that.
story about how I had to
Yeah,
adjust?
please.
So I was on the
Please.
phone a lot, interviewing candidates, and I was doing headhunting a lot of the time. Helping people get connected to a company I was working
Yeah.
for. And I would always tell Mom. So I had my card table set up right in front of her chair, and I would tell her, "Mom, I'm going to be on the phone now, and you're going to be quiet, and I will be with you in about a half hour, and you're going to be just fine." And she would say yes. And then I'd get on the phone and I'd start my call, and I would see Mom start to get up, and I'd think, no, 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 because she couldn't get up on her own. And then almost every time she would just yell out, "I gotta go potty!" Like, oh no! So then, and there was no telling her she couldn't get up and go. So I would have to explain to the person I was talking with and apologize, and everyone was gracious. But then I'd get her up to do her thing, and we'd come back, and then I'd call them back. But my word, it was always an adventure. It was always something coming up. But
That brings up something my sister and I constantly remind each other of, and that is that there are going to be these times where I don't care because we're both we're in the trenches right now
of
with our
course,
own
yes.
mother, and I live in California, and my mom lives in Milwaukee, and the listeners are aware that I've already spent 2 full months in
Mm-hmm,
Milwaukee in April and July. And now my mom is on
mm-hmm,
hospice, and it's kind of helped her come to this like fragile stability. But there are times where things just happen
mm-hmm.
and you have to
Yes.
laugh. You just cannot take them serious. And I remember my mom, just some of the things that she says. And I think I shared this on a previous show, but I'm going to say it again. My mom, when I came home in July, the very first week I came home and we were kind of settling into hospice, the hospice nurse showed up for a visit and she calls me and she goes, "Carol, we can't find your mom." And I go, "What do you mean you can't find my mom?" "Well, I'm in her apartment and she's gone. The scooter's gone." And I said, "Well, she's probably down in the dining room. So just go down to the dining room and see if you can find her. And then go to the front desk." And I know the guy's name at the front
Mm-hmm.
desk. I said, "Talk to so and so, and he will probably know my mom's schedule because she's pretty active there." So I didn't hear anything for about 45 minutes, and I thought, "Oh, they found her. She's back in her apartment. It's fine." I get this call from the hospice nurse, and she's like, "Okay, we've been looking
Oh
for 45
no!
minutes and we cannot
Oh
find your
no!
mom." She goes, "Can you think of any friends?" They're starting to make a list of the people that she socializes with and figure out where they are. And I'm like, "No." So the main nurse, who kind of heads up her care, was off. And so they called her at home and said, "Can you think of anything that she might have
Mm-hmm.
done or gone to? Is there someplace?" About that time, she's now been gone for almost an hour that they know of. This man comes in and he says, "Hey, there's a resident in the alley behind. I've called 911. They were on their scooter. They drove off the curb. The scooter fell over
Oh.
and my wife is with her. She seems fine, but we've got." My mom had not only gone outside on her scooter, which is not supposed to happen, but she had gone all the way around this huge complex to the very back side of the building in an alley and fallen off. Her scooter had driven off the sidewalk. And so she had laid there for
Oh
45
dear.
minutes. But you know what? My sister and I had to laugh. She didn't break
Mm-hmm.
anything. She got one little cut on her arm that we're still kind of wrestling with because her skin is so
Mm-hmm.
fragile. But my sister and I had to really kind of stop once we realized she was fine and kind of
Mm-hmm.
laugh about Was she trying to escape? Because we would ask her, what were you thinking? And then the story started, and every one of us got a different story of what happened. So we're really not sure exactly what happened, but we do know that they found her. And I think you
You
have to
do.
laugh, and so it would have been great had you had a video of
Oh,
that,
really?
because it was one of those COVID videos that would have gone
Yes.
viral.
Yes, exactly.
of
Yes.
your mom of your mom doing that. Well, Gaye, let's talk for a second about the
Mm-hmm.
shift from Lord, how do I fix this? Because I have said
Mm-hmm.
that. In fact, I was saying it this
Mm-hmm.
morning. Lord, how do I fix
Mm-hmm.
this? I'm in California. She's in Milwaukee. I can't just teleport
Mm-hmm.
myself there. But how did you shift from the question, Lord, how do I fix this, to what do you want
Mm-hmm.
me to know?
Well,
That's a
part
great
of it
shift.
is I think I'm the oldest child, and I have a
Okay.
great sense of Midwestern work hard, get it done, farm girl. We can
Yeah.
do this. So when mom, especially when her health started getting worse, I kept thinking, this can't. How do we fix this? I kept focusing on fixing
Mm-hmm.
this. Like, no, mom, you have to get up and walk. You've got to get up and do this. You have to eat, because I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
fix it. And she would get just more annoyed the more we tried to do that, especially as she got sicker. She just didn't want to eat. So I realized
Right.
I can't fix it. I remember she would drink Glucerna, though, strawberry Glucerna.
Yes.
And she always liked to take it to bed with her. So she'd have it. And we would wake up in the morning, and there would be Glucerna all over the bed, and because she'd spilled it.
Yeah.
And I think, Lord, this has to just not happen again and again. How do I fix this? And I finally
Right.
realized I can't. And that goes back to saying yes
Right.
to God and realizing we
Mm-hmm.
cannot fix their disease. We can't change it. We can't control it. In fact, that was
Yeah.
when she was
So
sick and I
true.
was taking care of her, is when I wrote my book, Getting My Ducks in a Row and Other Stories of Faith, because we can't get our ducks in a row. We can't. We might get them in the same pond, and then someone moves the pond. We just can't. So we have to stop trying to fix and control. And then I realized I need to instead say, Lord, I don't know what to do in this moment. What do you want me to know?
Yeah.
And he would tell me, if I would listen, what he wanted me to know, and then I would know how to pray. And then I could address the
That's so good.
situation, knowing this is what he wants me to do rather than me trying to control everything.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So let's talk for a second about your book, Getting My Ducks in a Row and Other Stories of Faith, because I think as caretakers,
Mm-hmm.
we do fall into
Mm-hmm.
that mindset of, I got to get these ducks in a row. And I love when you said you can get them all in the same pond. I can't get them
Right,
all in the same pond. I can't even get them all in the same
right,
state.
right, right.
I can't get them all in the same state. And I sometimes I sit here. This morning, my mom was having a bad
Mm-hmm.
day. She was just having a bad
Mm-hmm.
morning, and one of her nurses showed up, and it was time to help get her dressed and whatever. My mom was sitting in the chair, didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
do it, and just didn't want to do it. And so finally, the nurse left and called me, and she goes, "I don't know what to do." And I'm like, "Just let her." I said, "She's having a rough
Mm-hmm.
morning. Just let it
Mm-hmm.
go. Just let it go. She'll be
Mm-hmm.
fine. She'll either snap out of it or she
Mm-hmm.
won't." And so let's talk for a second about how we move out of the pressure of trying to get our ducks in a row, because I have seen all kinds of memes about,
Yes,
my ducks aren't even a row. I don't even know if I have ducks. Where
right.
are my
I got
ducks?
squirrels.
So, how do yeah, oh wait, that's
Uh-huh.
not a duck. That's a, So how do we move out of the pressure of trying to get our ducks in a row or get our act
Mm-hmm.
together when we're just trying to keep up with what's a new normal in caretaking? And really, normal
Mm-hmm.
is a tricky word because every day looks
Right,
different.
right. We have to really make sure that we're changing our mindset, how we think about the
uh,
situation we are in, because our natural
yes.
tendency is to protect and do everything we can for the
Mm,
person that we're caring for. We don't want them to hurt. We don't want them
yes.
to forget. We don't want them to have bed sores. We don't want that for them. So we
Yeah.
try and fix it. And what we need to
Yes.
realize is we can't, like we were talking about before,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have to change our thinking, because otherwise we will stay in that I have to
Yes.
control this, I have to fix this. So we change our
Mm-hmm.
thinking to realizing I am not in control. I have to remember that God
Yeah.
is in control. He has not forgotten this moment. He hasn't forgotten my mom, and he needs to show me what he wants me to do. We can't. And what happens
Mm,
if we try and fix and control, we are missing those very sacred and challenging moments that God is presenting us in
mm.
that illness, in that disease. Because there are
I love
beautiful
that.
moments in those
Yes.
times, but
Yes.
if we're trying to fix it, we're going to miss it. So it goes back to changing our
Oh.
thinking to say, God, I release this to you. I open my hands and I
Mm-hmm.
give you this glucerna spill moment. I give you this need to go potty moment, and I'm saying, meet me
Yes.
here. What do you want me to know?
Yes.
Show me how to love my mom in the way that
Mm.
she needs to be
Mm.
loved in this moment.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. I think another thing that kind of came to my mind is this idea of
Mhm,
identity, because you had your
mhm,
own business. You were living a mile down the road with your
mhm.
husband. You had everything set up the way you wanted it to set up. I I the same thing. I have my studio here at home. I'm comfortable in my little office. I love to write here. I love to do all the
Yes,
things
yes.
that I can do here in this room. And when I leave, it's so hard because I go there and my identity is oldest
Mhm,
child, big
mhm.
sister. You know, my mom will get mad at me sometimes and she'll say to her nurse, she's the difficult one.
Oh,
She'll say she's the
oh,
difficult one. She's the mean
oh,
one. One time she called me a general. She called me the angry
oh.
general, and her nurse was standing over there behind her, just kind of trying not to crack up because she knows it's not
Mhm,
true. But how does, I mean, our identities
mhm,
change as we walk. You know, you were driving 1 mile down
mhm.
the road from your home and your business to your mom, and your identity is
Yes.
changing with every, mile or quarter mile, or, as you get closer and closer. Mine is when I get on the plane, my identity starts
Yes.
changing. How do you deal with this changing identity in the role of
Mhm,
caretaker, and what did that look like for you
mhm,
as, a
mhm.
businesswoman with your own consulting
Mhm.
company?
It was hard. And when like I say, I just kind of moved my business over to mom's. She had an extra bedroom, a second bedroom. So when my sisters and I were there, we were able to stay have a place to sleep in the bedroom. But I set the card
Yeah.
table up, and that's where I worked from. And, but
Mm,
so much of my identity, Carol, because we didn't have children, my identity was a lot in my work, and I'd worked hard in my
yes.
career, and
Mm-hmm.
I had a good thing going, so to speak. And when that
Mm-hmm.
shifted because of those potty moments, or not being able to take on
Yes.
work because I didn't have the
Yeah.
time, I started to think, boy, who even am I then? Because this is
Mm,
not what I thought my life would look like. This even though and that was it was
mm,
never I was never angry at mom for it though. I never was no,
right.
despise. I never despised her. It wasn't that. It was just who am I? And I had to pull myself
Mm-hmm.
out of all of the organizations that I was in, either as a volunteer or as a leader. I had to step out of them because I just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. I just didn't have the time anymore. That was a shift. So when I shifted out of that, I lost some of those connections. And then I wasn't
Yes.
going to any events because I was with mom. I lost those being with friends. So that was all very
Yeah.
different. And God had to really work in my heart on that, that my identity is not my job. That's just one way I show up and show my identity. My
Mm-hmm.
identity is in a daughter of the living king. And that is who I
Yes.
am. But it took a while. What I did have to do though is find ways to connect with my girlfriends. And that became an important
Yes.
part, even if it was one on one, just on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And my sisters
Mm-hmm.
and I are very close, and we were always there for each other. But the identity shifted, and I had to realize, yeah, I am more than my work. That was a big shift. And I am a daughter of the king. I have a
Mm.
calling on my life. And right now, this calling has placed
Mm.
me in this living room on a card table with my mom, and I'm going to engage in it. I'm going to embrace it. Shift
Oh,
mind again, a mind
that
shift.
is so. That is, and it's so beautiful. And I think as caretakers, what you're talking about is so
Hmm.
critical because in January I had to make the same
Hmm.
mind shift, and I I remember getting off the plane in January for my very first trip. My mom, I've made multiple trips, like double digit trips in 2 years to from California to Milwaukee. And I remember getting off the plane and it was fun because I was expecting to go out to dinner because it was an early arrival, and so my sister picks me up and we're going to go have dinner. I know we're going to go to one of our favorite little restaurants, which I have favorite restaurants in Milwaukee.
Of course.
You know, and she said, "Oh, she had just moved into an apartment. Her husband had suddenly passed away a few months before, and so she had just moved into an apartment and she said, "Oh, we need to make a stop on the way to dinner." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "I have to buy a couch." And she goes, "I need you to go with me to buy the couch." And so we get into this furniture store, and she'd already kind of picked out three couches that she liked, but she was not going to purchase a couch until I got there because I had to lay down in the furniture store and test each one out and tell her which one I wanted to sleep
Oh,
on because she was buying a couch for her living room knowing that I was going to be the one
oh,
sleeping on
oh.
it when I went there. And I loved that
Mhm.
moment of just adjustment. Okay, this is my life. And when I'm there, I love I love what you said about being intentional about connecting because God, the same thing. I was very active in my church here and teaching Bible studies and all of these connections and
Mhm.
ministering. And I just had such a great network of people. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't do it anymore because I can't take care of my husband. I can't take care of my mom. I can't, travel back and forth. I can't do the speak. I can't do all of the things that God is opening the doors for me to do. And something had to go. And I lost a lot of connections. And so now I'm having to be very, 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 very deliberate about, oh, I'm going to put Gay on my calendar because we need to
Right,
have a Zoom coffee
right,
call so that we can
right.
catch up. And I love when I can open up my calendar for the month and go, oh, okay, I'm going to have a Zoom coffee call with Gay. I'm going to have a Zoom coffee call with
Mhm.
Kanita, and I can see where I am intentionally connecting. And more, I'm so thankful for technology because sometimes that's the only thing that keeps us
Mhm.
connected when we get into these caretaking
Mhm.
situations. So, I want to also talk about your new book. In your new book, Anticipate God's Goodness, you write that you want to start a movement. And I
Mhm.
like this, inviting women to stop waiting for life to show up and instead show up and find life. Now, I think this probably tags in with these women that you saw getting out of the water with their normal shoes and their normal swimsuits and jumping on bikes. But tell us, go into more deep detail about what this movement looks like that you're really challenging us to
Yes,
do.
and it does, and that was the first moment watching those women that sparked this little thought in me. We need to be more like those women. I think so many of us wait
Mhm.
until our ducks in a row, or we wait until life is perfect, or if we want to start our own business until we've got everything set up, or if we want to start
Mhm.
doing a hobby, we want to start tap dancing or crocheting, whatever it is, but we have to get everything perfect
Yeah.
first. And my suggestion is let's just stop waiting and let's go with what we've
Yeah.
got and start doing. We spend so
Yeah.
much time in the waiting room waiting because we want to make sure it's
Yes.
perfect. We want to make sure it's right. And we want to make sure that we're
Mm.
ready. And I'm suggesting, you know what? God has put a calling on our lives. And he is saying,
Yes.
get up and go. Get up and do. And
Mm.
for us to say, yeah, but I'm not quite ready. That's saying to God, yeah, but your timing is wrong. My timing is better. And that's
Yeah.
just not right.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying,
Yes.
we've got something. God has given us gifts. We don't have to wait until we can find a cure for
Mhm.
cancer. What we can do is we can slide in the pew
Mhm.
next to the woman who we think is having a bad day. We can walk down the block to the
Yeah.
neighbor. We can go to the food
Mm.
kitchen. Takes nothing extra. And then we look at the gifts that He
Mhm.
has given us, whether it's writing, speaking, singing, showing
Mhm.
up, writing the cards, and we get up and go instead of waiting. And I think part of what
Yeah.
shifted in that for me was going from this I need to fix something, I need to get ready, I need to
Mm.
control it, to Lord, what do you want me to know?
Mhm.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And that, we stop waiting for life to show up. Let's get on our bikes, put on our flip-flops and start biking. Let's go and get up and go. And when we
Yeah.
do that, we start to
Yeah.
discover life.
Absolutely. And I think I will put myself in this hot seat here and I will say that I have been
Hmm.
guilty of saying, "Oh, I can't do that. I need to be here. Oh, I can't do that." I remember shortly after my husband came home from the psychiatric hospital and he was still very, very much struggling. And I got invited to go to a Bible study at the church. And it was on a Wednesday morning for 2 hours. And I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to walk away and have 2 hours. And I know as a caretaker, that's one of the things. How do we
Hmm.
do it? And then I remember God saying, "How do you not do this,
Hmm.
Carol? Because you need community. And this is where you're going to find community." And I remember Jane, Mama Jane, I was sitting at her table and I remember that she would just reach over and put her hand on my arm. And I never said a word, which is so rare for me to be in a group of women and not speak. And I just showed up and I stayed for an hour. But here's what was so funny is that I couldn't really leave my husband at home and I didn't know what to do because I wasn't supposed to leave him like whatever. And, I needed to be close. That's what the psychiatrist had told me. You need to be close. And I can imagine with your
Hmm.
mom, you need to be close. So he brought his books and he would sit in the car under the tree with his cell phone and I would text him, "Okay, I'm going to be out in 10 minutes. I'm going to be out in 5 minutes. I'm going to be out." And then I would just kind of stay for as long as I felt like I could. And then I would go and he would be sitting in the car reading
Oh,
his books. And we did that for 5 months.
wonderful. Wow.
Every week on Wednesday morning. So I think that when we get into this mindset you're talking about, we get creative with
Hmm.
how we're going to deal
Hmm.
with this. And I remember we had Disneyland passes at that time and he could not handle the noise and he couldn't handle the chaos. But there's a little spot on Main Street in Disneyland where they have rocking chairs and I bought him a pair of noise canceling earphones. And I would get there early. I would take my grandchildren, my little grandchildren, and we would get there early and I would prop him with his noise canceling earphones on this rocking chair on Main Street. And I would say, "Just stay here. I'm going to go do this." And then we would come
Yes.
back and check on him. But I think you have to get
Hmm.
creative. And it's easier sometimes to just
Hmm.
sit in the house, but I think if we get creative, then it's more important because then we
Yes.
get out. So you talk about settling your
Hmm.
setbacks. So what does that look
Hmm.
like? Talk to us about settling your
If we
setbacks.
want to say yes to God, that means we are wholeheartedly saying, "Yes, God, I release everything I am to
Mm,
you." We can't do that
mm,
unless we have settled what's going on in our heart, those weeds that we need to pull up
mm-hmm.
and to plow out. We need to get rid of
Yes.
the sin that so easily entangles us. So we have to think about,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that's keeping me from God? What is it that when I put out my hands and I say, "Here, God, this is yours," I find myself pulling back one of my hands, and except for this, I still need to kind of take care of my mom, so we aren't really saying yes to God. And that really starts with
Yes.
confession
Mm-hmm.
and repentance. We have to settle those things
Mm,
that are keeping us from really knowing and leaning into God as He has called us to lead. So it's confess the lies
mm-hmm.
that we are believing and replacing
Mm,
them with the truths that God has said in His Word. And then we repent of those lies, those sins, and we
mm-hmm.
say, "Okay, I'm moving forward." We got to settle those setbacks.
Mm. I love that. And I think we have to have people around us that we
Mhm.
trust who will speak truth to us. I know my sister and I, our relationship has completely changed since we've been caring for our mom. We grew up in a very tumultuous life. We did not have a good relationship with our mom. And that has all
Mm,
changed in the last 2 years. It has brought my sister and I closer to each other, and we have a relationship because we sort of locked arms, like what you described with your sisters. We kind of locked arms and just said, we're going to do this
mhm.
together. And so nothing happens that we don't communicate about. Even the
Yeah.
smallest little thing we communicate. And we're very careful to make sure everybody gets, both of us get the same
Mhm.
information from each other. So we're always there. But what's interesting is that there are times when I get into what I call my pit bull mode, and I'm like gripping. I've got my jaws around this and I am not letting go for anything, and I am pushing, pushing, pushing for
Mhm.
resolution. And my sister will just quietly, I remember this happened when I was in Milwaukee. She just quietly comes out and sits down in the chair and says, "Hey, let's think about this for a
Ah.
second." And then she tells me very calmly, she's not telling me anything about me, but she's saying, "Let's think
Mhm.
about this for a minute. What if?"
Mhm.
And then I'll look at her and I'll go, "Okay, thank you." Because what you've just done is helped me realize that I'm spinning, I'm locked on, I'm trying to solve it. I'm not trusting God.
Mhm.
And so thank you for sort of pulling me back into reality. And I think that what you've just described about settling your setbacks is we just naturally want to fix it. We go back all the way to the beginning. We want to fix it and we can't. So, if you could, as we kind of wrap up today, I think you and I could talk for hours about this. If you could just tell the caretakers out there who are listening one thing to help
Mhm.
them keep
Mhm.
going during their caretaking season, because sometimes we just feel like we just can't do it one more
Mhm.
second. What would be one thing you could just encourage the caretaker out there who's feeling like, I know we have caretakers who are caring for Alzheimer's, cancer patients. We have listeners who I know have children with
Mhm.
disabilities, and I know that there are caretakers who are have health issues. And so, what would you tell that caretaker who's like at the end of their rope and just feels like they can't go on?
Oh, God bless you, listener, first of all. And I would say, as a
Mm,
piece of encouragement, you are not alone. God has not forgotten you.
mm,
He sees you. He knows what's going on
mm,
with the person you're caring for, and in your heart, he sees you. He hasn't moved on.
mm,
And I would ask you to show yourself grace. This is not a
mm.
journey that we get a roadmap for specific to our situation. We don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Show yourself
Mm,
grace because that's what God is all
mm.
about. He is a gracious, good
Yes.
God.
Oh, I love that. So, Gay, how can our listeners stay connected
Oh,
to
I
you?
love that. My website is gaylindfors.com. On Facebook, you will find me at Gaye Lindfors Author. And on Instagram, I'm Gaye Lindfors. Would love to stay connected.
I love that. I love that. And I'm sure there's links to your books, and you have got some pretty fun and very helpful uh pieces of information that they can download from your
Yes,
website too. I've been kind of poking
yes.
around, and so I will put all of that in the show notes so that the listeners can just go down to the show notes and click and find you. And I would say go out there and follow Gay on social media, and go in and sign up for her newsletter. She has a very encouraging newsletter that she sends out regularly. And pick up that new book. Pick up. I don't have a copy of Getting My Ducks in a Row. I'm going to go get that today because I think the title
Mhm.
intrigues me. Well, I like to close every show, Gay, by asking my guests the same question, and that is, care taking care of
Mhm.
yourself is so important. In fact, when we get off of this right now, I'm headed over to get my hair cut and colored
Mhm.
because that's just one of the things I
Mhm.
do to take care of myself. So this morning when I woke up, like I do every morning, I'm like, what am I going to do today to take care of
Mhm.
me? It was very easy to look at my calendar and go, oh, there it is. I'm going to go get my hair cut and colored and get this blue put back in there.
It's
The
pretty. It's
listeners can't
pretty.
see it, but I have a blue streak of hair here. And I like to close every show by asking my guests, what are you, Gay, going to do in the next 24 hours to take care
I'm
of
going to
you?
go for a walk. Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
love that. I love that. I love that. The walking is so good. Well, Gaye, thank you so much for joining us today. I just adore your smile, and I'm sorry the listeners can't see it. Go check out her website. And I will put all the links to your website, social media, and your books. I like to put the link to the Amazon author page and encourage them to
Great.
follow you. So they can find you. And when a new book comes out, then they get notified. I appreciate each of you listeners. Our journey as caretakers can be hard. And as we've shared today, we can get caught up in so many different emotions and feelings, and we have a tendency to isolate and lose that community and feel like we're all alone. And as Gaye said, we're not alone. In fact, there's 55 million unpaid caregivers in the United States alone. I'm one, Gaye's one. We're not alone. We are a community, and our community exists so that you know that you are loved and seen by the Almighty God. And He, as Gaye said so clearly, He's not forgotten you. He sees you. If you would like to know more about my personal caretaking journey, the links to my website, social media, and my book, Are You Ready to Find Joy When Life Gets Messy, will also be in the show notes. And I will be back next week for another meaningful conversation about what the caretaker's journey looks like. And until then, it's all about Him.